Louis Francis Albert Victor, Nicholas Mountbatten, 1st Earl Mountbatten of Burma, was one of the most influential figures in 20th century Britain. A military leader, statesman, and prominent member of the British nobility, he was a direct descendant of Queen Victoria and formed part of the inner circle of the royal family. He also played a decisive role in the life of the young Prince Charles, whom he guided and supported as a mentor. During the Second World War, he rose to the highest naval commands, and in 1947 he was appointed the last Viceroy of British India, entrusted with the complex task of overseeing the independence and partition of the subcontinent. His public career placed him at the center of some of the most decisive events of his time, whilst his private life was marked by controversial episodes that continue to generate debate today. Before we begin, we invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell, as we regularly upload historical content that will interest you. Without further ado, let us begin. Louis Mountbatten was born on the 25th of June 1900 at Frogmore House, Windsor, into an aristocratic family closely connected to the royal household. He was the son of Prince Louis of Battenberg, later Marquis of Milford Haven, and Princess Victoria of Hesse and by Rhine, and great-grandson of Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. During his childhood, he was educated at home and later at elite institutions, before entering the Royal Naval College, Osborne, in 1913 to train as a naval officer. During the First World War, he served as a midshipman on board the cruiser HMS Lion from 1916, and later on the battleship HMS Queen Elizabeth, taking part in naval operations towards the end of the conflict. In 1917, in the midst of a surge of anti-German sentiment in Britain, his family adopted the anglicized surname Mountbatten in place of Battenberg, in line with the dynastic change to Windsor decreed by King George V. After the war, Mountbatten continued his academic studies in engineering at the University of Cambridge before resuming his naval career. In 1920, now a young lieutenant in the Royal Navy, he was assigned to the battlecruiser HMS Renown and accompanied the Prince of Wales, Edward, the future King Edward VIII, on official visits to Australia, India, and Japan. That extensive journey forged a close friendship between the two, further consolidating Mountbatten's place within the inner circle of the British royal family. On the 18th of July, 1922, he married Edwina Ashley, a British aristocrat and granddaughter of the magnate Sir Ernest Cassel, heir to a vast fortune. The wedding, held in London, became one of the most notable social events of the year, attended by the elite and by numerous members of royalty. After the ceremony, the couple embarked on a luxurious honeymoon that took them through several European courts and to the United States. The marriage produced 2 daughters, Patricia, born in 1924, and Pamela, born in 1929. However, despite its initial brilliance and the intense social life they led, their marital relationship would, in time, diverge considerably from traditional expectations. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Mountbatten continued to rise through the ranks of the Royal Navy. In 1932, he achieved the rank of captain and deepened his technical training, showing a marked interest in naval communications and emerging electronic technology. Parallel to his military career, the private life of Lord Mountbatten and his wife Edwina took an unconventional turn for their era. Edwina, a charismatic figure of London high society, began to feel increasing dissatisfaction in her marriage shortly after the birth of their first daughter in 1924. That same year, she embarked on her first extramarital affair, a development that triggered a crisis within the couple. Louis, deeply in love but traditional in temperament, was initially devastated upon learning of his wife's infidelity, as their daughter Pamela would later recall. However, determined to avoid divorce, which terrified him due to its potential social and professional consequences, Mountbatten agreed to reach an understanding with Edwina. Over time, their marriage evolved into a discreet, open relationship, in which both maintained separate romances without breaking public appearances. This arrangement, unusual within their social milieu, preserved their union and projected an image of a glamorous and enviable couple, even though beneath the surface they led largely independent emotional lives. Throughout the 1930s, Edwina Mountbatten accumulated a succession of notable lovers, generating persistent murmurs in the tabloid press of the period. It was even reported that the Countess was involved with such prominent public figures as the African-American singer Paul Robeson, something considered scandalous in the Britain of the time, given its prevailing social prejudices. She was also linked to the Caribbean musician Leslie Hutchinson, and later to a close friendship with the Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru. Some newspapers hinted at these affairs. In 1932, a columnist alluded to the relationship of a society lady with a colored man, an indirect reference to Edwina. Such reports forced the royal household to intervene and prompted the Mountbattens to take legal action to suppress the scandal. For his part, Lord Mountbatten was not immune to extramarital relationships. Within private circles, his discreet liaisons with aristocratic women were well known, including the young Margaret Wigham, later Duchess of Argyll, and the French socialite Yola Letellier. At the same time, more veiled rumours suggested that Dicky, as he was known to those close to him, also felt attraction towards certain young men, although any indication of bisexuality was carefully suppressed in an era when such acts were punishable by law. Years later, Lord Mountbatten himself summed up this particular dynamic with a candid remark: "We spent our married life getting into other people's beds." With this open acknowledgement of their mutual adventures, the couple confirmed what high society already suspected. Their union was built upon an unconventional understanding designed to withstand the ongoing romantic diversions of both spouses. The outbreak of the Second World War found Mountbatten ready to assume major naval responsibilities. At the start of the conflict, as a captain, he was given command of the destroyer HMS Kelly, flagship of his flotilla. Aboard the Kelly, he took part in intense naval operations until the ship was torpedoed and sunk during the evacuation of Crete in May 1941. Despite the loss of the Kelly, his bravery and leadership caught the attention of Prime Minister Winston Churchill, who in October 1941 appointed him Chief of Combined Operations, entrusting him with the preliminary planning for the future Allied invasion of Western Europe. In that role, Mountbatten coordinated elite commando units and directed amphibious landing exercises, preparing British forces for the eventual Normandy operation. He rose rapidly in rank over the course of a few weeks to match his new strategic responsibilities. In 1943, at only 42 years of age, Louis Mountbatten was appointed Supreme Allied Commander, Southeast Asia. This appointment, supported by his cousin King George VI, made him one of the youngest commanders to hold such a multinational supreme post during the war. At the head of the Southeast Asia Command, Mountbatten directed the campaign against Japanese forces in Burma and Malaya. Under his leadership, British and Allied troops succeeded in halting the Japanese advance and ultimately recapturing Burma and the strategic base of Singapore in 1945. These victories helped hasten Japan's surrender in the Asian theater, consolidating Mountbatten's reputation as an effective military leader. By the end of the conflict, now holding the rank of admiral, he was celebrated in Britain as a war hero, admired both for his naval service and his personal charisma. With the arrival of peace, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee called upon Mountbatten for a political mission of enormous historical magnitude, supervising the independence of British India. In February 1947, Mountbatten was appointed the last Viceroy of India, tasked with overseeing the transition from British rule to self-government within an accelerated time frame. At 46, the Admiral accepted this diplomatic challenge and arrived in New Delhi in March 1947. In marathon meetings with Indian nationalist leaders, Mountbatten negotiated the terms for ending colonial rule. Working against the clock, he decided to bring forward the date of independence, initially planned for 1948, to 15th August 1947. At midnight, the jewel in the crown of the British Empire was divided into two sovereign nations, India and Pakistan, ending nearly 2 centuries of colonial Raj. Although the petition was accompanied by violent sectarian unrest, Mountbatten fulfilled his mandate to transfer power in record time, earning the respect of the Indian leader Nehru, who invited him to remain as the first Governor-General of independent India. Lord Mountbatten held that ceremonial office from August 1947 to June 1948, serving as a bridge between the newly formed republic and the British monarchy. Mountbatten's role in independence was complex. On the one hand, he received praise for his decisiveness and for the good personal relationship he cultivated with leaders such as Nehru. On the other, some historians have criticized him for the haste of the partition, which may have exacerbated communal violence. Within the family sphere, his wife Edwina also left her mark during this period. As Viceroy, Edwina devoted herself to humanitarian work, assisting refugees of the partition, and she forged close ties with Jawaharlal Nehru. The closeness between Edwina and the Indian Prime Minister was so profound that speculation arose regarding a possible romantic relationship, although her daughter Pamela insisted that it was primarily an intimate friendship built on exceptional mutual trust. What is certain is that Edwina and Nehru maintained a prolific correspondence even after the Mountbattens' departure from India, and remained close friends until Edwina's premature death in 1960. On 21st June 1948, once the transition had been completed, Louis and Edwina Mountbatten left India amid expressions of gratitude. At their farewell ceremony, Indian leaders praised their service and paid them honours as they sailed out of Bombay. Thus closed the final chapter of the British Empire in the subcontinent, with Mountbatten as a privileged witness to that historic moment. With his experience as an imperial statesman, Mountbatten returned to the United Kingdom and resumed his naval career. He was appointed commander of the Mediterranean Fleet of the Royal Navy from 1952 to 1954, and later promoted to First Sea Lord, Chief of the Naval Staff, from 1955 to 1959. In 1956, he attained the highest naval rank, Admiral of the Fleet. He subsequently served as Chief of the Defence Staff from 1959 to 1965, becoming the government's principal military advisor. During these years, he received numerous honours, including the Order of the Garter and other high distinctions. After retiring from active service in 1965, Lord Mountbatten did not withdraw from public life. He assumed honorary posts such as Governor of the Isle of Wight and devoted time to his many hobbies, which ranged from recreational sailing to radio technology. At the same time, Mountbatten strengthened his role as a patriarchal figure within the royal family. As early as the 1940s, he had influenced the dynasty by encouraging the courtship between his nephew, Prince Philip of Greece, and Denmark, and the then heir Princess Elizabeth, the future Elizabeth II. In fact, it was Mountbatten who in 1939 facilitated the celebrated meeting at Dartmouth between Philip and Elizabeth, planting the seed of a romance that would culminate in a royal marriage. Years later, once Philip of Edinburgh and the young Queen had established their family, Mountbatten became a close advisor to the sovereign, especially in the early years of her reign. His influence would be even more notable with the next generation. Prince Charles, Mountbatten's great-nephew and heir to the throne, found in Uncle Dickie the grandfather he had scarcely known. Charles called him his honorary grandfather, and Mountbatten guided him in personal matters and in his military formation. By the mid-1970s, Lord Mountbatten even attempted to orchestrate Charles's future marriage by suggesting that he should take as his wife Mountbatten's own granddaughter, Amanda Knatchbull, in an effort to bind his family yet more closely to the House of Windsor.